While shark attacks are extremely rare, they can still cause fear. The odds of being attacked by a shark are about 1 in 11.5 million. Sharks primarily hunt fish and marine mammals, not humans. The risk remains very low despite a slight increase in reported attacks due to more people swimming. You can safely enjoy interactions with these magnificent creatures by taking proper precautions. The commercial fishing trawler Silver Marlin, which had experienced numerous storms over the years, was battered by the unrelenting waves that crashed against its weather-beaten hull. The year was 2009, and the sky was a foreboding shade of gray, letting loose torrents of rain savagely batter the deck. Grittier than most, having worked these dangerous waters for over 20 years, Mike Sanchez gripped the railing with calloused hands as he navigated the slick surface. His 4-person crew was calling out barely over the howling wind as they hurried to secure the lines and equipment. Mike was unprepared for the abrupt and forceful lurch of the ship, which caused his boots to slip on the wet deck. He fell overboard instantly, the cold water engulfing him like a vice. He was fighting against the churning sea, and the weight of his wet clothes threatened to pull him under. Mike gasped for air as he emerged from the depths, looking around wildly for his ship. However, the storm's wrath had already made the Silver Marlin disappear, causing it to fade on the horizon. With only his life jacket to keep him afloat, he was alone and adrift in the vast Gulf of Mexico. Mike's brain raced with survival scenarios as the adrenaline flooded his veins. He knew well the danger sharks swarmed these waters, and his splashing would surely alert their sensitive eyes. He tried to be as motionless as possible to conserve his energy, and hold out hope that his crew would notice he was missing and come looking for him. As the sun set and an unsettling twilight fell over the churning waters, time seemed to drag on forever. Mike felt the chill of the night air seeping into his bones and his muscles burning with exhaustion. He was about to give up when something brushed against his leg. A light, ominous touch gave him a sudden, intense feeling of terror. He saw a dark, triangular fin slicing through the waves straight toward him in the last of the light. The sight of a bull shark, its icy, lifeless eyes staring at him with a predator's intensity, was so real to him that it made his heart race like a jackhammer. Mike thrashed wildly, kicking and flailing as he desperately tried to stave off the oncoming danger. But like a hunter stalking its prey, the shark was unrelenting in its circle around him. The massive jaws of the creature brutally crushed Mike's left leg as it violently charged forward with an explosive burst of speed. Mike let out a scream of anguish as intense pain shot through his body. With every sharp jerk of its head, the shark's teeth tore through muscle and flesh, tearing his limb apart. More of the ocean's top predators would be drawn in by the warm gush of blood that he could feel seeping into the water. Mike realized he had to act quickly through a fog of shock and pain. His hands trembled as he reached for the knife fastened to his belt, his fingers slick from blood. He stabbed the shark in the eye, causing it to thrash so violently that he almost lost consciousness as the shark briefly relaxed its hold. The relief did not last long. 2 more sharks quickly followed the scent of blood, their sleek bodies gliding gracefully through the water. Mike realized the odds were against him, his strength waning as he was surrounded and wounded. The next few hours blurred into a nightmare frenzy of splattering, growling, and the sickening crunch of teeth on bone. With all his strength, Mike fought off the relentless sharks emerging from the dark depths, slashing and stabbing at them. Each time he repelled one, another's teeth came dangerously close to his face. It was a macabre dance of life and death in the water under the cold stare of the stars. Finally, the sharks retreated. Mike felt his strength failing as the first signs of dawn streaked across the horizon. His left leg hung uselessly at his side, a twisted mess of ripped flesh and exposed bone. And his knife had long since slipped from his grasp and vanished into the churning depths. The distant thrum of an engine sent a ray of hope through his battered body, just as he felt the cold tendrils of unconsciousness creeping in. With all the energy he could muster, he waved his one good arm wildly, his raspy cries barely audible over the roaring waves. The sound intensified much to his relief, and before long, the distinctive outline of a ship emerged on the horizon. After realizing he was missing, the crew of the Silver Marlin turned back to search for him. As the vessel approached, the shark seemed to sense the danger and vanished into the depths, leaving only a red wake behind. Mike's heart raced with adrenaline and relief as he struggled to stay conscious. After what felt like an eternity, he finally felt the firm grip of ropes around his upper body and was pulled onto the ship, his beaten body collapsing in a heap on the deck. The crew scrambled to his side in shock at what they had just witnessed. As the ship's doctor attended to his wounds, Mike recounted the terrifying experience to his shell-shocked crew. In the close-knit community of Gulf fishermen, Mike's struggle with the relentless sharks and his determination to survive against all odds became legendary. In the days and weeks that followed, he underwent multiple surgeries and a taxing rehabilitation process. While the physical scars would always remind him of his near-death experience, it was the emotional trauma that troubled him the most. The formerly fearless captain was suddenly overcome with a deep fear of the open sea due to the eerie recollections of those lifeless, cold eyes and the razor-sharp teeth always just below the surface. He knew the Gulf had permanently altered his physical and spiritual makeup. Nevertheless, Mike's unwavering spirit triumphed. Though he lost a limb to the abyss's ruthless teeth, he had conquered his struggle, showcasing the human spirit's resilience against nature's most primal fears. As the Silver Marlin set sail once more, its hull slicing through the same waters that nearly claimed his life, Mike stood at the helm with a newfound respect for the vast unknown depths surrounding him. He understood that the ocean's mysteries extended far beyond human comprehension. Its inhabitants, from the smallest plankton to the largest predators, constantly reminded us of our fragile place in the vast scheme of things. Each encounter reinforced the ocean's unpredictable nature and power to assert dominance without warning. This realization filled Mike with a profound respect for the sea, driving him to approach each voyage with awe, caution, and reverence for the powerful forces lurking beneath the surface. In 2011, the unwavering Australian sun shone down on the turquoise waters of the Arafura Sea, which gleamed like a million diamonds in northern Australia. As Dr. Karen Lee adjusted her mask, she gazed at the magnificent view of the colorful coral reef before her. Even though she had traveled to many far-flung places as a marine biologist who studied venomous sea creatures, the natural beauty of this area never ceased to astound her. For the previous 2 weeks, Karen and her research team had been based on board the RV Nautilus, where they had been closely observing the population and migratory habits of the notorious box jellyfish. These cube-shaped creatures were among the most vicious on the planet, their cluster of tentacles adorned with powerful venomous nematocysts. Theoretically, this particular day's dive was typical. Karen's mission was to gather water samples and meticulously observe jellyfish in their natural environment, to record their behavior and interactions with the reef ecosystem. She double-checked her equipment and ensured her protective suit was securely sealed, a crucial precaution when dealing with such deadly creatures. After giving her diving partner, Sarah Thompson, a reassuring nod, Karen rolled off the boat's stern and plunged into the glistening depths. Even after years of diving expeditions, the vivid kaleidoscope of coral and marine life that greeted her never ceased to amaze her. Karen and Sarah started to descend, moving through the water with ease, and they neared the area that was covered in box jellyfish. Exhilaration and fear surged in Karen's heart. These animals were the focus of her career, but she was also acutely aware of the serious threat they posed. Karen couldn't help but be in awe of the jellyfish's otherworldly beauty as she methodically collected her samples. Their translucent bodies moved gracefully, and their tentacles trailed behind them like gossamer threads. She grabbed her waterproof notebook and began recording her observations about their interactions and behaviors. Catastrophe struck during a brief moment of deviation. A searing pain tore through her left hand, as if 1,000 hot, sharp needles were being inserted into her flesh. She recoiled in agony, her eyes widening in horror. As she realized a box jellyfish had wrapped its tentacles around her exposed skin, where her glove had slipped, leaving her vulnerable. Her training kicked in immediately, as she frantically tried to remove the creature. But the damage was already done. The venom coursed through her veins like liquid fire, potent enough to kill an adult in minutes. Realizing the severity of the situation, Sarah signaled for an emergency ascent. Karen felt the venom's paralyzing effects taking hold, her limbs growing numb and unresponsive. Her airways started to narrow due to the toxins, making every hard breath feel like glass fragments. Karen was hardly conscious when they surfaced, her body racked by convulsions and excruciating pain. Her desperate cries for assistance caught the attention of the other crew members, and Sarah hauled her onto the boat deck. The team rushed to give Karen first aid, but her vision flickered in and out of focus. She could make out the terrified expressions on her co-workers' faces as they worked frantically to stabilize her. Their mouths were moving in silent terror. As the venom began to take its inevitable toll, time appeared to blur and distort. Karen's thoughts became confused and chaotic as her mind wandered. The anti-venom, a valuable substance that could be the difference between life and death, was the only thing she knew she had left. She knew that this was her only chance. Drawing on the last of her diminishing energy, Karen focused on the faces of her crew. She tried to speak to convey the gravity of her situation, but her lips refused to cooperate, and all she could manage was a distorted whimper. A crewman named Jacob Wilson leaned in close, his eyes filled with determination and fear. His voice cut through the fog, threatening to engulf her consciousness as he urgently asked where the antivenom was. Karen's fingers trembled as she weakly gestured toward the medical kit, her movements increasingly unsteady. Jacob sprang into action, rifling through the supplies with a desperate urgency that perfectly matched the gravity of the situation. It seemed like an eternity passed before Jacob reappeared, clutching the priceless vial of antivenom, its clear liquid glinting through the chaos like a ray of hope. With what little strength she had left, Karen nodded weakly. A fleeting sense of relief washed over her as the needle pierced her skin. As the antivenom began to circulate, counteracting the lethal toxins that had nearly killed her, she felt a glimmer of hope. However, the fight was far from over. The venom had already inflicted severe damage, and her recovery would be long and arduous. Over the next few days, Karen was trapped in a nightmarish state of fever dreams and excruciating pain, slipping in and out of consciousness. The crew worked tirelessly, their faces etched with somber determination, to keep her hydrated and monitor her vital signs, fully aware of the gravity of her condition. Karen's improvement was agonizingly slow at first. Her breathing gradually became easier as the paralysis subsided. Despite the physical healing, the psychological trauma remained. The incident with the box jellyfish forever etched in her mind. During her time in the ship's medical center, Karen reflected on the fragility of life and the respect required for even seemingly harmless creatures. Though her body was bruised, her spirit remained intact. Even the most experienced explorer is vulnerable to nature's whims. The ocean, for all its beauty and wonder, is a domain ruled by harsh laws. Karen's recovery was long and challenging, marked by physical therapy and emotional upheaval in the weeks and months that followed. Yet her passion for her work remained unwavering throughout. Her near-death experience had only intensified her determination to uncover the truths about these fascinating yet dangerous creatures. Standing on the deck of the Nautilus, gazing out at the vast expanse of the Arafura Sea, Karen felt a profound sense of purpose. She now carried a renewed respect for the sting of death lurking beneath the waves. Her ordeal had not dampened her spirit, but had instead ignited a deeper resolve. With the ocean's mysteries still waiting to be unraveled, Karen knew her journey was just beginning. She was more committed than ever to understanding and protecting the delicate balance of the marine ecosystem, driven by a passion that had only grown stronger through her trials. In 2008, the sun was high in the clear sky over Boracay Island, Philippines, bathing the pristine white sands of Puka Beach in a warm glow. Mark Thompson and Lisa Davis, a young couple from Seattle, had escaped their gray, rainy hometown to experience this tropical paradise. Eager to soak in the island's renowned natural beauty, they were ready for an unforgettable adventure. Lisa couldn't contain her wonder at the pristine waters that stretched out in front of them as they strolled hand in hand along the shoreline, the soft waves lapping at their feet. She exclaimed that it was even more amazing than the pictures she saw online. Mark agreed, and it seemed like something from a dream. He smiled and lightly squeezed her hand. He suggested they go closer and look at the shallow coral reefs that border the shoreline, their vivid colors visible even from a distance. The thought of snorkeling among the well-known marine life excited Lisa's face. She excitedly concurred that they ought to get their equipment from the hotel and get started right away. They returned to the beach shortly after, their snorkeling masks and fins firmly in place. Mark led the way, wading into the inviting, warm waters until they were sufficiently deep to start their exploration. They were both taken aback by the sight of the underwater world, a kaleidoscope of hues and forms, and a captivating tapestry of life. With faces full of amazement, they pointed out different species to one another as they swam side by side, their movements slow and deliberate to avoid upsetting the fragile ecosystem. After spending eternity in this aquatic wonderland, Mark felt his foot brush against something on the sandy bottom. His eyes slid down to the seemingly innocuous rock that blended perfectly with the sand around it. Mark shifted forward, placing his foot squarely on what he thought was a rock. Sharp spines pierced his foot, and intense agony washed over him instantly. He recoiled in shock, realizing with horror that the rock was a well-camouflaged stonefish, one of the deadliest animals in the ocean. His sudden movement startled Lisa, who turned to see him thrashing in the shallows, mask and snorkel abandoned, clutching his foot in agony. Her heart sank, knowing how serious a stonefish sting could be if left untreated. With unwavering determination, she overcame her fear and swam to his side, encircling his writhing body with her arms to keep his head above the water as the strong venom took effect. His face twisted in agony, his body erupted into a violent convulsion, and he began to exhibit the classic symptoms of paralysis, including unresponsive limbs and labored breathing. Knowing that every moment mattered, Lisa began dragging Mark's limp body toward the shore, her muscles straining as the water threatened to submerge them. Finally reaching the soft sand, she hauled his trembling form onto the beach, where a group of concerned onlookers had gathered. With his head nestled in her lap, Lisa's hands shook as she rummaged through their first aid kit for the emergency antivenom they had brought, praying they wouldn't need it. With desperate urgency, she administered the antivenom, heart pounding as she watched his face for any improvement. Each agonizing moment was an eternity until, at last, his convulsions slowly began subsiding and breathing eased. The sirens broke the anxious silence of the arriving medical team. Lisa watched in dismay as the experts took charge and loaded the ghostly pale Mark onto the waiting stretcher while she stepped back, shaky with leftover adrenaline. The sight of the motionless, mottled stonefish was a stark reminder of the perils hidden beneath the waves. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits, tense waiting, and fervent prayers. Throughout Mark's recovery, Lisa remained a steadfast source of support, even as he grappled with severe emotional and physical scars. In the following weeks and months, they reflected on the fragility of life and the importance of respecting seemingly harmless creatures. The beauties of the ocean belied its harsh laws, a warning that deadly surprises could lurk in even the most stunning places. Standing once more on Puka's shores, their toes sinking into the soft white sand, they shared a knowing glance. The azure waves that had once tempted them now filled them with a respectful fear, a constant reminder of the strength and cunning beneath the surface. Yet their love for the ocean's mysteries remained. True adventure lay in embracing the unknown, facing their fears, and emerging with a deeper appreciation for nature's wonders. As they turned to leave, hand in hand, they carried with them a newfound respect for the stealth hidden in the sand, a silent, watchful, and deadly sentinel guarding the secrets of the deep. It was 2013 in San Francisco, California. Overlooking the busy docks of San Francisco Harbor, the setting sun created a warm golden glow. The sound of waves crashing against weathered pilings created a calming soundtrack to the day's hectic events. Joe Martinson was one of the scrambling dock workers, and his face and hands were sunburned and calloused from years of hard work on the waterfront. Using the back of his hand to wipe away the sweat from his brow, Joe paused as the final few crates were loaded onto the waiting cargo ships. The seasoned dock worker was always proud of himself after a long and demanding shift, as it was a job well done. That's when Joe noticed some noise from the water's edge where rowdy seals had congregated. Even though these amusing marine animals were common in the harbor, Joe felt their behavior this evening was unusually hostile, as evidenced by their barks and snarls. Joe's curiosity improved, and he decided to investigate, his heavy work boots thudding against the weathered dock planks. His attention was drawn to the seals' agitated motions, their sleek, predatory-like bodies defying the impression of harmlessness. As Joe turned to return to the relative safety of the dock office, a larger male seal noticed him, its eyes locking onto his with an unsettling intensity. The seal's expression changed instantly, its eyes narrowing with a clear, aggressive gleam. Joe was unprepared for the forceful creature that suddenly shot out of the water, its jaws opening wide as it hurtled toward him. His reflexes kicked in, causing him to stumble backward and fall off the dock into the freezing depths below. His legs collided with the seal's massive bulk, pounding his heart. Joe found himself submerged in the murky harbor, the force of the water knocking the wind out of his lungs. His heavy work clothes weighed him down as he thrashed, struggling to break the surface, disoriented and gasping for air. Just as his head emerged from the water, a searing pain exploded in his shoulder. The relentless seal had clamped down with its powerful jaws, tearing through flesh and muscle. Joe let out a cry, his voice a choked gurgle, in a desperate attempt to repel his assailant. That's when Joe's survival instincts kicked in, a primal drive taking hold. His fingers slid through the warm, viscous flow of his blood as he used a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength to pry the seal's jaws from his shoulder. Undeterred, the seal circled back for another strike, its sleek body cutting through the water with practiced ease. Realizing he had to move quickly to survive, Joe braced himself for the next attack, determined to fight for his life. He used all his strength to aim for the closest piling, using his arms and legs to push himself through the water desperately. The seal gave chase, its powerful flippers slicing through the water with alarming speed, closing the distance between them with every passing second. Joe's hand grabbed the rough barnacle-covered piling just in time to prevent the seal's jaws from closing in on his leg. He struggled to escape the murky depths and the relentless predator pursuing him, his muscles wailing in pain as he hauled himself upwards with a sudden burst of determination. Joe's beaten body finally fell onto the dock after what seemed like an eternity, his ragged gasps for air mixing with the helpless screams of his fellow workers who had witnessed the horrific ordeal. Joe took one last look at the harbor waters as the paramedics arrived, their sirens wailing in the evening air. The seal had recoiled its sleek form, vanishing beneath the surface with a flick of its powerful tail. Even after a steady recovery in the hospital, Joe's emotional scars would persist, serving as a continual reminder of the unpredictable behavior of the wild animals that coexist with humans. Though his physical wounds gradually healed over the days and weeks that followed, the psychological impact lingered. Once a haven, the harbor had become unsettling, a stark warning that even seemingly safe environments can harbor hidden threats. Once inviting and familiar, the serene waters now seemed ominous, concealing the potential for danger beneath their surface. Joe's newfound wariness transformed his view of the harbor, reminding him daily of the fragile balance between humans and the wild and the respect and caution required to navigate this delicate coexistence. In 2011, in Florida's Everglades National Park, the humid air hung thick and heavy over the vast marshland, teeming with life in its varied and untamed glory. Among the tangled mangroves and murky waterways, a small documentary crew had arrived to capture the raw majesty of one of nature's most mysterious ecosystems. Tom Wilkins, an experienced cameraman whose passion for documenting wildlife had taken him to some of the most dangerous and isolated places on Earth, led the way. Each cautious step he took caused his boots to sink into the soft, spongy ground. His trusty camera was slung over his shoulder, and a look of steely determination was etched upon his weathered features. With a small group of researchers and support personnel surrounding him, Tom maintained a high level of awareness and was constantly looking for any clues that might point to the elusive creatures that lived in this marshland. The sound of birdsong filled the air, accompanied by the soft rustle of invisible beings making their way through the thick foliage. Tom could not help but be in awe of the pristine beauty surrounding them as they navigated the meandering waterways. This was a sanctuary where nature ruled supreme, a delicate balance of life hanging in a precarious equilibrium, untouched by the relentless march of human progress. As they continued, Tom's sharp eye noticed something peculiar. a row of parallel, deeply cut grooves carved into the muddy banks of a nearby creek. His heart raced as he recognized the distinctive drag marks of a crocodile's tail, evidence of a massive reptile hauling its bulky form onto dry land. He gestured to his team and quietly approached, ready to capture the elusive creature on camera. However, as he neared the water's edge, a sudden movement in the dark depths caught his attention before he could react. A massive form erupted from the water, its powerful jaws opening wide in a display of instinctive aggression. Tom had ventured too close to a hidden nest of saltwater crocodiles. Feeling threatened, the mother crocodile launched a sudden and violent attack. In an instant, Tom was seized by the enormous crocodile, its fangs ripping through his leg as it pulled him relentlessly toward the water. The sheer force and speed of the attack left him stunned. His body dragged toward the depths, his team's shouts of alarm echoing through the dense marsh. He had never felt such intense pain before. A white-hot anguish threatened to take over his every thought and leave him powerless. But Tom was no stranger to hardship, and his survival instincts kicked in as he flailed in the crocodile's vice-like jaws. He swung out with his free leg, his boot hitting the reptile's snout in a desperate attempt to break free, driven by a surge of strength. Struck by the sudden resistance, the crocodile briefly relaxed its hold, allowing Tom to pull himself over to the relative safety of his startled crew members. The reprieve, however, was fleeting, for the furious predator quickly regained consciousness and rushed forward, its enormous bulk slicing through the murky waters at an incredible pace. Tom and his team acted quickly, seizing any improvised weapons they could find, such as sturdy branches and camera tripods, anything that would help them repel the ferocious creature. Their expressions, a mix of fear and grim determination, formed a protective circle around their wounded comrade. One of the researchers, a young woman named Sarah, moved forward and brandished a long, sturdy branch like a spear as the crocodile closed in its jaws, snapping menacingly. She let out a primal cry as she pushed the homemade weapon in an attempt to stop the crocodile from charging. The crocodile retreated in surprise at the unexpected resistance, suggesting that the tactic worked for a while. But in an instant, the branch was snapped like a twig by the beast's strong jaws, sending Sarah sprawling backward and missing the creature's deadly embrace. As Tom's crew battled to treat their wounded comrade's severe wounds, they did everything possible to keep the angry crocodile at bay. The primordial predator's savage determination to defend its territory was ingrained in every fiber of its body, and the air was heavy with the pungent smell of blood and its guttural snarls. After what felt like an eternity, park rangers and emergency personnel finally arrived, as the sound of approaching sirens broke through the confusion. Tom was able to receive life-saving medical attention after the medical team used their combined efforts and specialized equipment to subdue the crocodile and secure the area. After the terrifying experience, Tom thought about the impenetrable barrier that marked the border between life and death in the Everglades' untamed wilderness. He had come face to face with nature's raw, primal power. Though he bore the scars of his physical and emotional encounter, he emerged with a newfound respect for the delicate balance that governed this ancient ecosystem. Tom realized his experience had permanently altered him as he looked out over the enormous wetlands, the setting sun bathing the rippling waters in a warm, golden glow. The Everglades, once a mere backdrop for his documentaries, had revealed itself as a living, breathing entity, a place where the laws of the wild still held sway, and the line between predator and prey was etched in the blood and sweat of those who dared to tread its treacherous paths. And that's when Tom silently vowed to honor this wild wilderness's majesty, using his camera to capture its unadulterated beauty and unwavering ferocity. In the face of marshland terror, he had glimpsed the essence of life itself, a primal struggle for survival that echoed through the ages, a testament to the indomitable spirit that burned within all living things. Having tasted the bitter tang of mortality during that terrifying encounter, his will to survive had been strengthened by the crucible of hardship. Standing on the familiar harbor planks with a salty breeze caressing his face, Joe realized his life would never be the same. As time went on, Joe grew a little stronger, a little wiser, and a little more grateful for the priceless gift he had been given, a second chance fiercely earned and cherished. In 2015, the Philippines' Tubataha reefs in the Sulu Sea were a sight. The glistening waters gently lapped against the dive boat's hull, securely anchored to the sandy bottom below. On the deck, a group of seasoned divers busied themselves with last-minute preparations, eager to explore the underwater wonders that awaited them. Their movements were precise and practiced as they double-checked their gear and reviewed their dive plan. One of them was a seasoned diver named Ana Delgado. Her love of underwater exploration led her to some of the most beautiful and secluded places on Earth's oceans. Ana, though small in stature, exuded a quiet confidence. Her golden hair was pulled back into a tight braid, and her hazel eyes were hidden behind well-worn dive masks. Today, their destination was the Tubataha Reefs, a breathtaking stretch of coral atolls resting atop the Sulu Sea's calm waters like a jeweled crown. This UNESCO World Heritage Site is renowned for its amazing biodiversity. Its vivid coral gardens teem with a kaleidoscope of marine life, from colorful tropical fish to graceful sea turtles and majestic whale sharks. However, the hollow remnants of a Spanish galleon with its centuries-old hull resting in the dark depths offered Ana and her team the real prize, as they offered a compelling window into a bygone era of maritime exploration and conquest. The crystal-clear waters were still as the divers descended below the surface, only disturbed by the regular puffs of their regulators and the occasional school of fish darting among the colorful coral formations. Ana was in awe of the otherworldly beauty around her, and the scene appeared dreamlike as sunlight peeked through the azure depths. The crew descended farther and soon saw their target, the shipwreck with its rusted timbers sticking out of the sandy bottom like the skeletal remains of some extinct monster. Ana felt excitement rise in her chest as she followed her teammates through the complex labyrinth of twisted rigging and a deteriorating hull. That's when she noticed something. A small opening in the wreckage that could just barely fit a diver through. Ana signaled to investigate and slipped through the door without considering her options. Her strong dive light cut through the darkness as she explored the dark interior. She had no idea this seemingly unimportant choice would start a series of events that would test her team's ability and resolve. Her heart skipped a beat when Ana's light revealed something as she dove deeper into the wreckage. A maze of twisted shapes entwined and coiled among the rubble. Her breath caught when she realized what she was seeing, and a shiver went down her spine. Sea serpents, and not just any sea snake, but the extremely deadly Belcher's sea snake, are among the most lethal species in the world's waters. The serpents' flattened tails and sleek banded bodies made them ideal for underwater living. Their strong venom could paralyze even the strongest prey. Ana stopped, cold breath caught in her throat. She kept still, hoping the snakes wouldn't consider her a threat. It was too late, though, as one of the larger specimens, startled by her presence, quickly uncurled and pounced its fangs, penetrating deeply into Ana's bare foot. A severe burning pain shot through her leg and ran like liquid fire through her veins. When Ana felt the first unsettling, tingling sensations of the venom taking hold, she felt like biting back a scream, and her eyes went wide with fear. Ana turned and forced herself back through the small opening with what little strength remained, her movements growing increasingly uncoordinated as the venom's paralyzing effects took hold. Her teammates, alerted by her distress, immediately realized the gravity of the situation and sprang into action. They knew that Belcher's sea snake venom worked quickly, stopping the body's respiratory and neurological systems in hours, so time was of the essence. They carefully removed Ana from the debris, her limbs already starting to stiffen and her breathing becoming more difficult, using a makeshift stretcher they had put together with practiced efficiency. The team faced a series of challenges that would have been difficult in any other situation as they worked their way back toward the dive boat. The complex network of coral formations, the constant risk of disorientation, and the intense physical effort required to move an incapacitated diver through the depths all contribute to slowing the diver's progress and depleting their air reserves. However, they persisted, driven by a desperate need to save Ana's life and deliver the life-saving anti-venom that was waiting for them above the surface. Ana's condition worsened minute by minute, the venom's pernicious hold tightening around her body and causing her once bright eyes to glaze over. Her companions battled panic attacks, concentrating only on getting to the dive boat and starting the difficult ascent to the surface. After a seemingly endless period, the boat's well-known silhouette finally emerged, its anchor line shining brightly in the vast blue distance. The crew used incredible strength to hoist Anna's limp body onto the deck, where the ship medic started treating her for injuries and giving her antivenom right away. There was a tangible sense of tension on the boat as the minutes passed, with every team member silently hoping Anna would respond to the treatment, overcome the odds and survive. A tiny twitch of her fingers and a shallow but steady rise and fall of her chest indicated movement just when everything appeared lost. The team breathed a sigh of relief upon realizing that Anna had survived the worst of the ordeal. Their unwavering determination and her unwavering spirit had defeated the silent strike of one of nature's most formidable predators. As the venom's after-effects wore off, Anna's recovery in the following days and weeks was gradual but steady. Her body regained strength, and her enthusiasm for diving and exploring remained undiminished. The experience, however, instilled in her a newfound respect for the risks lurking beneath the surface. The terrifying experience had served as a harsh reminder to Anna and her team of the delicate balance that ruled the underwater realm, where danger and beauty coexisted in a precarious dance, and where even seemingly harmless creatures could hide deadly secrets. However, they had come out stronger from it all. Their bonds of trust and friendship were cemented in the furnace of misfortune, and their resiliency was tempered by the awareness that they had faced death head-on and prevailed. As Anna looked out over the shimmering Sulu Sea, she knew that her love affair with the ocean would never end. There she had found the real depths of her courage and the unbreakable spirit that united her with other adventurers. Although the silent strike had been a painful lesson, it reaffirmed an age-old truth about exploration. The greatest journeys are not measured by the distance traveled, but by the unwavering human spirit that drives pioneers into the vast and awe-inspiring unknown.